This Impact Wrestling review was brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Makes Monster Energy look like a puddle of puke. So a couple days ago, we got the announcement that Lockdown will only have the top 3 matches in the steel cage. That's Jeff Hardy, Bully Ray, Lethal Lockdown, Angle Briscoe, and everything else will just be a normal match apparently. I have mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, it takes away the main selling point of Lockdown being the all-steel cage pay-per-view. It also means that we're going to lose the X Division Escape match, which was a Lockdown tradition, not to mention one of my favorite matches all year. And that hurts. That's a heartbreaker. But on the other hand, throughout the years, there's always been a certain number of Lockdown matches that really had no business being in a steel cage, either because of a lack of build-up or because of the people involved. Example, Robbie E versus Devon from Lockdown last year, Velvet Sky versus Gail Kim from Lockdown last year, which you could argue kind of watered down the concept. But you could also argue that it was the fault of the writers for allowing matches like that to happen in the first place. If you don't want any subpar cage matches, just book better ones. Write better feuds with better talents that'll culminate in matches that do belong in a steel cage. But that doesn't always work out. So I guess I do understand the rationale behind it at least. I think there's pros and cons to doing it this way. Personally, I would have kept it the way it was, but that's just me. It seems too much like Elimination Chamber now. I'm not a big fan of this idea, but it does save us from having to see people like Robbie E and Velvet Sky in cage matches, so there is a silver lining there. So how about Impact? If TNA were making their final big push for Lockdown this week, you really have to question the decision to focus most of the show on hyping Lethal Lockdown. And yes, that's usually how it goes, but when the match hinges very heavily on the perceived threat posed by the Jobbers and Scrubs, a faction that most people have come to think is a complete joke, it kind of just feels like they're pissing in the wind here. I'm sorry, but the Jobbers and Scrubs are just not a threat, and everyone knows it. It doesn't matter how dominant you tell us they are at this point, because when push comes to shove, they just haven't gotten the job done. Why would anyone take them seriously when you haven't given us any reason to? Time and time again, they talk a big game, and then they get embarrassed. Come on, Smokey! You asked for this, remember? They have all these matches to determine the man advantage, and it gets off to a bad start immediately. Wes Briscoe versus Kurt Angle starts with Wes cutting an embarrassingly bad promo, and then Angle comes out, and even though the Jobbers and Scrubs had him cornered and beat down in the clubhouse last week, not only is Angle free, but he's completely without injury. So Kurt must have fought them off and escaped the clubhouse somehow. The clubhouse, which apparently is located in the same parking lot as the fucking Impact Zone, and yet, for the last 10 months, no one in TNA could figure this out?
Oh, what a bunch of bull.
The match never really gets started. D'Lo Brown kicks Angle in the nuts, and predictably D'Lo is the VP, which they telegraphed months ago. I guess it makes sense, because there was a plot thread that the Jobbers and Scrubs had someone on the inside helping them, but much like with Taz joining the group, it's like, well, what the hell can they really do with this now? I mean, D'Lo isn't a wrestler anymore, and even if he got back in the ring, he's not going to deliver anything interesting. I mean, adding someone like Jay Bradley or Crimson would have helped a lot. It would have helped people take the group seriously. Adding some believable badasses would lend some credibility to a faction that really doesn't have any. But D'Lo Brown? I mean, what can he possibly bring to this? The Jobbers and Scrubs added another retired wrestler / backstage agent to a lineup that was already laughably bad. So what? Is that supposed to sell me on Lockdown? Because it doesn't.
This whole show is ridiculous!
Devon beats Sting after a plant in the crowd threw a drink in Sting's face, which probably should have caused a DQ, but didn't for some reason. Match was boring, instantly forgettable, at least it was short. But no matter how hard they push him, Devon doesn't belong hanging with the top guys. It's just not believable in any way. The next match I marked out for. Samoa Joe and Magnus put the team back together for one night, and you know what that means? Joe Daddy's reunion for the win, bitches! Yes! Yeah, I'm still calling them the Joe Daddies. You don't like it? TS. The reaction they got here really makes you wonder why TNA broke them up so soon. That tag team could have had a lot more mileage on it. But then again, the time really has come to push Magnus as a singles guy, so... They beat Doc and Garrett Bischoff, and thank God for that. If they'd lost to those two schmucks, I probably would have turned the TV off right then and there. Then James Storm loses to Ken Anderson in the main event, which really felt too short. Storm continues to have absolutely no direction as a character, and that is so disappointing. Man, the writers have dropped the ball on that guy.
You people are fools!
None of these matches were amazing, but at least the heels get the man advantage, which is kind of necessary for Lethal Lockdown. Whether that's going to help you give a crap about that match or not is up to you. For me, it really doesn't. The Jobbers and Scrubs may have Forrest Gumped their way to a couple victories here, but I still don't view them as any kind of threat to these guys, and after the last several months, I don't see why anyone would. I did actually like what they did with Eric Young here, though. With him trying to show Sting that he's being serious now, trying to get Sting to rely on him to give him a chance, but Sting just having no faith in him. And why should he, really? I mean, Eric has been a clown for so long now that if he wants people to not treat him that way, he's going to have to earn that. So I like that they played that honestly. And it kind of set up EY to possibly be the difference maker in Lethal Lockdown. I really think Magnus should be that guy, but this was not poorly done, so we'll see what happens. Although, we really have no cause to think that the faces would even need a difference maker. The Jobbers and Scrubs have been made to look like such idiots since Bound for Glory. Why on earth would we think that Sting's team is not just going to plow right through these losers? The tag team title match hype continues to confuse me. Bobby Roode is still MIA for some reason. I don't know what's going on with that. And Austin Aries is now more concerned with the world title match at Lockdown. He calls out Jeff Hardy at the start of the show, and they have an impromptu match. Yes, it was good, but I don't see how it served to put heat on either title feud for the pay-per-view. Then Matt Morgan, of all people, shows up when he's barely been glimpsed in weeks. He gives Hardy the carbon footprint, and Bully Ray runs him off. This was a good segment, but the sheer randomness of the whole thing didn't make me hyped for Lockdown. I'm not really sure what it was supposed to do. I assume it was setting up stuff for after Lockdown, but shouldn't we focus on the pay-per-view first and worry about that stuff after? Isn't that why you got rid of 8 pay-per-views? So you could give them more hype and focus on one big show at a time? But I will say that this segment gave me a little bit of hope for the Matt Morgan push. It came completely out of left field, and comes on the heels of him being stuck in a makeshift tag team that went nowhere, but this is what Morgan should have done after Bound for Glory. If he says he's going after the world title, he should be going after the world title, not getting stuck in the mid-card again. Will the writers actually pull the trigger on Morgan this time? I don't know. But if they're going to do it, they better do it soon, or they might as well just fucking release him. They've been playing this start and stop game with Morgan for way too long. Give him the ball or don't, but either way, it's time to make up your damn minds. Los Stereotypicos and Velvet Sky versus Bad Influence and Gail Kim. Really weird choice for an hour main event segment. I mean, loading up that period with the top guys is usually a better way to go, just saying. Just standard stuff to hype both feuds. The heels get the win, which they really needed, especially Bad Influence. The match is fine, although Velvet's clotheslines have somehow gotten even worse since last week, and I didn't think that was possible. I mean, for Christ's sake, she's barely even connecting with those damn things. Is it any wonder why I don't give a rat's ass about seeing Velvet versus Gail again?
I got a little something I need to get off my chest right now.
But it's going to happen regardless, and I just don't care to see it again. So instead, let's fast forward a few weeks. Now, presumably, Velvet Sky is going to be the Knockouts champion for a while, love it or hate it. We got to find a way to make her title reign interesting somehow, so what do we do with her? Well, Velvet has 2 fresh feuds available, Mickey and Tessmacher. You turn one of them heel, preferably Mickey, and at the very least, you got a Knockouts feud that we haven't seen yet. And that's something. With the current roster, that's pretty rare. And plus, Mickey has a new album out, crossover appeal is very important, so it makes sense to get her back in a prominent role. You build the title picture around those 3 women, and you're set until Slammiversary. As for what Velvet does if she gets past Mickey and Tessmacher, that's tougher, because by then she's officially feuded with everyone. By this point, we've seen every feud you can make with Velvet. Just champion versus challenger won't cut it anymore, so this is where storylines become critical, to find a new way to make fans care about an old matchup. The one idea I had was building up to a triple threat match with Gale, Velvet, and Tessmacher, and bill it as a past versus present versus future type of thing. You got the veteran who just turned 36, and is starting to feel like her clock is ticking and she doesn't want to let go of the top spot. You got the current it girl who thinks it's way past time that the veteran stepped aside and she took over that spot. And you got the scrappy up-and-comer who's like, the past is the past, the present had its time in the spotlight, the future is now, that should already be me. We would have already seen these women fight many times by then, but there's enough stuff to work with there that you could at least present it in a different light and do some interesting character development. So that would be one way to go. So even though she won the gut check match last week, Ivelisse Velez gets cut. I gotta admit, that shocked the hell out of me. I thought Velez was clearly the better choice. Lady Tapa might be more unique, but Velez outperformed her in pretty much every area and seemed ready for TV, whereas Tapa probably needs more work. There's some speculation that both women have been signed, which I guess is possible, but we don't know that for sure. What is for sure is that the live crowd was not happy about this. They booed the decision, and they must have really wanted Velez to win because they were crapping all over Tapa when she came out. And whether that was heel heat or X-Pac heat remains to be seen, but either way, those fans were pissed off. Bruce Pritchard votes no, so Tapa has to kick out, and the lack of interview skills she displayed here was one of the main reasons why I thought Velez should have won this thing. Frankly, I thought this promo was lousy. Just really uncomfortable and awkward. I wasn't convinced at all, I'm not sold on her character. If Tapa's got any real charisma, she didn't show it here. For future reference, keep a live mic away from that woman. But despite the bad promo, she gets the contract anyway. I'm pretty nonplussed about this, to be honest. I didn't care for her last week, and this week did nothing to change my mind. Her wrestling was alright, but hopefully they'll send her to OVW to work on her mic skills because they need a lot of work. In the meantime, TNA still needs new knockouts that are TV ready. So hopefully they'll pull a Joey Ryan with Ivelisse, or do Knockout Gut Check again with Nikki Storm or Shauna or someone, because I don't see Lady Tapa being ready yet. The final segment was Bully Ray confronting Jeff Hardy, and this was improved from last week in that this time they didn't have Bully skewing so far to the babyface side of the fence that it was overkill and felt out of character for him. They wisely tweaked that stuff, and Bully was intense, and he got over what being the world champion would mean to him and why it's important to him. And his promo is very good. The problem is, there's still no heat between these guys. If Bully is turning heel and you want him playing the babyface before that happens, so be it. But even if they're both faces, they shouldn't be acting like they're in a bromance because that doesn't make us want to see them fight. It doesn't sell this match. You have to make this compelling within the context of a face versus face matchup, and right now, it isn't. What this exchange desperately needed was one of these guys saying, I may respect you, but this ain't about respect, it's about the World Heavyweight Championship. Respect or no, this Sunday, I'm kicking your fucking head off. The lack of any real tension between these guys is what kills this. And it's why everyone and their brother thinks there's something fishy going on here. Because when you go to such great lengths to avoid it, you're just making people suspect it more.
This whole show violates everything about my journalistic integrity.
Then the Jobbers and Scrubs show up. And there's this big brawl with all the Lethal Lockdown participants. And this part was just silly. Sting has, on more than one occasion, taken out the entire Jobbers and Scrubs faction single-handedly, and now all of a sudden he can't? Now he needs a whole team to help him? Bullshit. You can't backtrack on that now. These guys are jobbers, plain and simple. With this being the last TV show ever in the Impact Zone, was anyone else kind of disappointed that they didn't have some kind of big show closing angle where the entire set gets destroyed? That would have been awesome. But they still have to film those one-night only shows in there, so they couldn't do anything like that, unfortunately. That bummed me out. This Impact may have been a step up from previous weeks, in that at least Lockdown was the main focus, minus one or two segments. But the focus on the jobbers and scrubs does nothing but drag the show down at this point. And for a lot of the build-up before this, it felt like they were just spinning their wheels creatively, which is exactly what the new pay-per-view model was supposed to eliminate. I don't even know what they're doing for an X Division title match at Lockdown. I don't think they ever announced one. And for a pay-per-view that you had not one, but several months to build up, that is just unacceptable. Period.
I will not participate in this charade this evening.
But you know what? In spite of everything, I'm still in a good mood. Because not only have I had several weeks without Fourth Dimension Fool Killer making my life a living hell, but after months and months of listening to him talk shit about me, I finally got my hands on that punk-ass loudmouth Smokey and shut him up for good. Impact may have been a flawed show this week, but nothing's gonna sour my good mood after that. So bring on Lockdown. I got a feeling it's gonna be smooth sailing from here. And let that be a lesson to you. Bitch. Oh.